Welcome to Soul of Travel. I am excited today to be sitting down with Elkie Nicholas, who is one of the co-founders of Trees4Travel, and another serendipitous connection via the virtual world, where I just started seeing the work she was doing popping up on LinkedIn and was really interested and reached out to have a conversation. And we immediately had so much shared interests and visions for the industry. So we knew we had to share on the podcast. So I'm so excited that you're here. Welcome to the conversation.
Thank you very much, Christine. I'm really excited to chat with you today. And thank you for this amazing opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me. Well, as we start, I would first love to just give you the opportunity to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are in the space of travel right now.
Okay, so as you said, Christine, my name is Elkie Nicholas, and I am the co-founder of Trees4Travel. I am a tree hugger. I've always loved trees. I'm also a yogini, very much into my yoga, and I'm also a serial entrepreneur with my husband, Nico. We've been in the travel environment, travel tech environment for about 8 years, I would say. And then just at the beginning of the pandemic is kind of when we decided to kind of look at travel in a completely different way. So that's kind of my introduction, if you like.
Yeah, thank you. I love that you say that you're a tree hugger. I saw the picture of you on Instagram. I don't know, it wasn't a couple of days ago, where you were out in this beautiful forest, literally hugging trees. And I was like, oh, that looks like it feels so good.
It really does. It really does.
Yeah, there's something to that exchange of energy. And I have always had this, I don't know, like this connection or this story, and I should have looked it up before we chatted, but I wrote this poem one time about like the wisdom that's in the trees and how it's whispered to us on the wind when we pay attention, and just like that kind of grand stateliness, especially, you know, that trees have been witnessing humans for hundreds of years where they stand. And I don't know, like if you really start to dive into the magic and what they stand for, I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And actually, I have always really treasured just walking in forests. I find them such healing places. And I actually, you know, still today, every lunchtime, I'm blessed to have a forest near me. I go for a walk. It's my place to just to kind of stop and to re-energize, and it's like a walking meditation when you go through forest. And I mean, it's been kind of proven now as well that forest bathing is actually something that's recognized. I think it comes from Japan originally, where they use that term, forest bathing, and it just has so many healing powers. So, you know, and I've been doing that since I was a child, actually. So, you know, I'm originally, my family came from Austria. So I was born in the Austrian Alps. So I always had forests around me. I mean, I left at a very young age, but I think it's just in my DNA. So, so I think, you know, that's really where my love of trees has come from. So.
Yeah, it's something when you are surrounded by that, when you grow up, you don't realize like what a special thing it is. And if you then go to a city or a desert or places that just don't have that lush greenness around you. I grew up in the mountains of Montana in northwestern US. And so very similar, like just there's something so comforting and like cozy and like safe and secure about being amongst the protection of trees. And it, like you said, it is very healing. So well, to learn a little bit more about you, how did you start to get involved in travel, or really like when did you know that travel was something important in your life that you wanted to kind of fold into your business, or how did it start to show up in your life? Did you travel early, or was it something that happened later?
Well, I was actually very, very lucky because my first ever flight. I was 3 years old, and I actually remember that flight as if it was yesterday, because I remember the sensation of walking up the aisle, okay, as the plane was actually taking off, pretty much as it was still, going up into the sky. I know I should have had my seatbelt on, but I suppose they weren't that strict with rules then. But I actually remember the feeling of kind of climbing up the aisle and feeling so happy. And I was singing. I just remember thinking I'm on an adventure. And I was 3 years old. I mean, I don't know. And as I said, I kind of feel as if it was yesterday. And the reason I was on a flight at that age is because my father and my mother basically were asked to go to London to work for a company that they were working for. So my father became an export manager and for a company, and so we headed off to London, and then I spent then most of my childhood living in a big city. But then every summer I used to fly back to Austria because all my cousins were there, all my family, and I used to fly on my own quite often. So even as a very, very small, I used to have one of those little passport bags that were kind of put over my head. And my parents would send me off, and I used to love it because I used to feel grown up, and then I was flying when a lot of my friends had never been anywhere near an airplane. So I knew that I was lucky, very, very fortunate. And then obviously when I went back to Austria, I used to stay there for whenever it was school holidays. So I'd be there for a good month. And so I really kind of experienced still that kind of being in the mountains and the forests, being close to nature. And for me, that was always my safe place, the place that I just felt free and just loved it. And then kind of later on in life, also as a kid, actually, with my parents, we used to always then travel. We used to drive in the car down to the south of France. So that was my other love, because I live kind of in London and in France. We kind of do a bit of both. And our children were brought up in France. So I'm a real Francophile. I have always loved the country, the food, the wine, the scenery, the mountains, the sea. There's so many beautiful places here. So we used to drive down every summer to South France. And then also later on, when I then decided to, when I got my first job, my very first day of work was, I was going on a flight from London to Hong Kong. And I took that job because it involved travel, because I was so excited again to go and discover somewhere new. But I was actually in the fashion business. Okay, so that's kind of where my origins are. I studied fashion. And so that was my very first day of work. I was on a flight flying to Hong Kong, and that was my first kind of really long haul flight, which was amazing. And in fact, after that, I used to fly to Hong Kong almost every other month. So, when you're talking about carbon footprint, my carbon footprint is enormous. When I just think how long I was in the fashion business for a good about 13 years. And I spent a lot of that time traveling because a lot of the fashion was made in the Far East. But of course, at that time, I just, I wasn't any the wiser. And, and unfortunately, I think that was the problem then. I think we were kind of very ignorant about what was going on. There were a few, I think probably the first time I really, really thought about climate change was when Al Gore did that video called An Inconvenient Truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember watching that and thinking, oh, so for me, that was the first time I probably thought about it. And that's, I don't know, what is that now? 10, maybe even 10, 13 years ago or something, even maybe a bit longer.
I think it might be longer.
So, but again, it was just, I think because it just wasn't out there and it wasn't part of my, I didn't think about it. And like I said, like most people, that's how it was. So anyway, so I continued to fly and work in the fashion business. And then I think it was once I had the boys, so Nico and I, we have 2 boys who've now left home. But obviously when you have children, you spend a lot of time trying to teach them how to be good human beings, to do the right thing, and you every day. And I suppose that's really when I started to, or we as a family, really started to think about the future for our kids, the way we live, what we do, and then I suppose over these, since the boys have been growing up, sustainability has been coming up more and more, and coming out into the open. And actually, I really, I think Greta has done an absolutely phenomenal job. She, bless her, a young girl who's just gone out there speaking her mind and just bringing it out into the open. I think, and the fact that she is a child, that's what's great. So, that's definitely when my ears started to prick up a bit more, and so that, and then of course there's, my other favorite person in the whole kind of sustainability arena is Leonardo DiCaprio. He has done some amazing work, and David Attenborough.
Mm-hmm.
I just love all of his films. I mean, he's done some amazing movies actually during the pandemic. I don't know if you've seen any of them, Christine,
mm-hmm.
but
yeah,
like Breaking Boundaries just blew me away. I mean, it just explains it in very simple terms that, the science is there now. There is so much research has been done on climate change, and the writing's on the wall. We have to now, all of us, do our bit, and we can all do our bit.
mm-hmm.
It's very, very easy to start at home, and I love that. I think I feel very positive about the future. I don't think it's easy. There is a lot to do. There's a lot of change, but I think the more we talk about it, the more people who know what they can do. I think 99% of people want to do good and want to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just that we don't always know where to start. And that is, that's the thing. And that's kind of where I hope Trees4Travel will, we've really focused on an industry where we feel we can make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And we also wanted to make it really simple. And I hope that's what we have delivered. Sorry, I talk a lot, don't I? Once you get me going, I can't stop.
That's okay. That's one of the great things about these conversations, is that I do get to talk to people who are so passionate about what they do. And I think that's I think that's amazing. I think that is how we are able to create the most impact, is when people are really passionate about the work they're doing. And like you mentioned with Greta, and like the voice that comes through her, and the way she's able to share, and the way people listen to her, because it's just such a part of who she is, however that came to be in her, like you can tell. And what I love about her, and her being so young as she begins to share this message, is that, like, my oldest daughter is 12 now, but I think she was probably 9 or 10. And when Greta was in the US and she spoke in Denver, and my oldest daughter heard on the radio, we were driving her to school and she's like, she's here right now. Can we go? I said,
Oh,
absolutely. I'll drop your
fantastic.
sisters off at school and we'll head into Denver to hear her. And she's like, I can't believe she's a child. And look how many people are here to listen to her. And this outdoor, stadium that we were in, or
Yeah.
garden was just packed. And she couldn't believe that adults would listen to kids, which was a huge thing, I think, just for her
Yeah.
to witness like the value of what she may have to share, because she was able to see this other person share what they believed in. And then she just was so caught up in the community aspect of it and everybody being there together, and then the hope, and also disheartened by like this problem, but also just something about that youthfulness that allows you to like breathe into life the possibility. Like, I guess you haven't been shut down enough times yet to know or to feel like it's not possible.
Yeah.
But it was really powerful. I'm really grateful that we were able to have that experience, because I think it really shifted how she sees the world and how she understands what people can do, and that people are actually trying to do something together. I think a lot of times it does feel really daunting because we feel like it's just us against this huge problem that seems insurmountable. But when you see a community together like that and are a part of a movement, then it helps it to feel like there might be something possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, really. I think it's just such an exciting time. I don't think we've ever had such a powerful movement that's happening. There's so many people now get it and want to be involved. And I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
So, we got to keep going.
Yeah. Well, you
We got to
mentioned
turn
that,
this around.
yeah, you mentioned that you are a serial entrepreneur. And so at the beginning of 2020, before the pandemic, or as it kind of, I guess, arrived, became known to us, you had actually were starting another business. So can you talk to us a little bit about how that came about, and then your transition into Trees4Travel and what created that shift for you?
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to kind of the beginning of 2019, actually, because first of all, I went on a lifelong dream trip. I went to India for the first time, and somebody who's really into yoga, that's a very important place to go to. Mm-hmm. So, and when I went to India, I was actually so sad to see how much rubbish there was everywhere. And that was, if you like, that was for me a kind of a first real kind of wake up call with regards to sustainability, and and I don't know, it's just really shocked me, and I just thought, I was thinking, how can we change this? That's where you start questioning when you see, what's really going on. And during that year, so I went to India, and then so for me, and already, as I said, Greta had already, I was already following what she was doing. I came back, and Nico and I were discussing about this idea that we had about this business that would allow travelers to choose a vacation based on weather. So, that you've got a vacation from this date to this date, and you wanted to kind of make sure that when you went away, that you would have good weather, because we've all been on a holiday and then arrived. It's our 2 weeks once a year, and arrived and the weather's been really crap. and it's so disappointing, or, you know, if you were expecting to lie on the beach or whatever. And so this new website was going to be called Sun Searcher. And of course, because it was weather related, we were doing a lot of research on weather and weather data and all this kind of stuff. And of course, it was very apparent. This all related to climate change. So it was like, there's no way we wanted to launch this type of travel service without including sustainability, you know, in a big way. And because I was really delving into this subject, I suddenly noticed as well that there was so much talk about trees in other products. You know, you wanted to buy sweatshirt somewhere, and they would say, oh, if you buy sweatshirt, we'll plant you a tree. And I just kind of thought, okay, what's all this tree, you know, what is all this tree business? And so I then spent pretty much 6 months to a year just diving into papers and, you know, and science behind it. And it was very clear that trees are actually our best carbon technology. There isn't anything out there yet that is as powerful as trees. And so I said to Nico, I said, right, do you know what we need to basically plant trees with every booking that somebody makes on our website. And then, so anyway, as the discussion was going, literally a week later, as we were kind of thinking how we were going to integrate the trees into the booking system and so forth, the pandemic arrived and we went into lockdown. And so we thought, okay, well, this isn't a good time to launch a travel product, seeing as all the planes are grounded. And so we decided that maybe this was a good time to kind of reach out to all of our contacts in the travel industry and to just kind of talk to them, introduce this idea that we had and see what they think and see what they thought. And actually everybody that we spoke to said they absolutely love this idea of, you know, connecting trees to travel. And so as the pandemic continued, you know, like all of us, I think all over the world, we thought, oh, this is probably only going to be a few weeks, you know, or maybe a couple of months, and then it'll be over. It became very clear that this was going to, you know, continue. So we thought, do you know what, we're going to spend this time to actually develop a product that is that allows trees to be integrated to other people's travel websites, businesses, or whatever. So we can, you know, not just keep it for us, but do it for everybody, do it for the whole industry. And that was Nico who said, you know, we've got to do this for everybody. We've got to, you know, this is our chance now. There's kind of this pause in travel. This is the moment we need to do this. So we spent then the next 6 months to a year developing this, doing all the kind of tech behind it. And then we started to reach out to lots and lots and lots of travel companies all over the world, presenting our research, presenting the facts, the figures, and everybody seemed to love it. And so, you know, and it's since then, I just can't look back. I just love this project. There is so much good that we can do. And I think the thing that was most important actually to me, having done all the research, is that's keeping it simple. I think that was the key element in all of this. And that is really what kind of attracted me to it initially. You know, like I said to you, the first time I really heard about a tree being associated with product is there was a company that had a sweatshirt, and they said, with every sweatshirt we'll plant a tree. And I thought, we need to do that kind of thing in travel. And that's when we then came up with this concept of translating trips into trees and really simplifying that whole process. Because of course, I mean, there have been kind of, if you like, carbon offsetting options that have been presented on some airlines previous to the pandemic already. But the problem is we just can't relate to CO2 in kilos or pounds, or, because it's not tangible. It just doesn't mean anything it doesn't mean anything to me, and I think it doesn't mean anything to most people. And I think that's one of the reasons why so many of our partners and, the people who we're still presenting to now, they love what we're doing, because we have just taken the complexity out of it. But saying that, at the same time, this is still a very complex subject, I mean, when we translate those trips to trees, there's a lot that goes on in the background. Okay, so I mean, to do the calculations, we use DEFRA and GHG protocols, which are the kind of international recognized standards for calculating CO2. And then we also use the basis, we kind of got an average of an oak tree. Okay, so we use that calculation of the first 10 years of an oak tree, where we say a tree absorbs 164 kilos. So that's kind of how we do our calculations. Okay, then the other thing as well, every single tree that we plant, okay, which is actually a sapling to begin with, is actually backed up by United Nations certified emissions reduction certificate. So it is actually that carbon that we say we offset is actually offset as quickly as possible from those carbon credits. Okay, because actually you can't offset travel just by planting a little sapling, because that tree needs to grow. It's only once a tree is about 10, 20 years old that they actually can start measuring the carbon properly from a tree. But of course, so initially the tree is kind of a symbol when we say trips to trees, but we are offsetting through the United Nations carbon credits that we back up with every single tree. So in fact, we're doing a double whammy, which is also something that is really, really important, because we do need to keep planting trees. And like I said earlier, the science is there. It's been proven, and that's why tree planting, tree growing has kind of boomed, and we need to keep planting. And especially with climate change, we're already feeling it, all over the world, in the US, in Europe, Australia, all over the world. There have been some awful forest fires, and we are all feeling it, and we need to keep planting. And we also still need to reduce emissions as much as we can. And that's where mindful travel, comes into play. And, that's something that we do also really talk about a lot, about being responsible with travel. We love travel. And that's why, that's why we're doing this, because, I think also the other realization is that people are not going to stop traveling. We have always traveled, since day one, man has always traveled, and we will continue to travel. And while the technology is improving, we have got to take those first steps. Everybody has to do a little bit. And that's why, we are Trees4Travel, because we know this is what everybody can do as they travel.
Yeah. I was just reminded, as you were talking about the sweatshirt purchase, that when I bought a car in, like, I don't know, my daughter was just born 2012 or something, and they said that they planted 10 trees for every, vehicle that was purchased through this company. And I just remember thinking, oh, that's pretty cool. Like, that's cool that they're thinking about that. And but again, I lived in the Pacific Northwest. And so I was like, in my mind, there's just endless trees, right? This is just what was surrounded by. But it did make me question, like, well, why are they doing that? Why is that important? Why is that a big enough of an initiative that they are putting that into their business model? And so that was probably kind of my first look around, and trying to understand. And I started working in sustainable travel right around 2000, and was working for companies that were really trying to take their corporate social responsibility initiatives and turn them into sustainability platforms for their company. But at that time, it still felt like there was just so few people that were doing it, that it felt like it was just almost like a fad or a trend or something. Like it didn't seem practical that if only this small amount of companies were doing it, that we could create a large amount of change. And obviously, and it's crazy to think that it's been 20 years of being in that space of conversation, there's been so much growth. But to think about what we need to do still, it's a lot that we have ahead of us. But I do love that you are talking about how, as travelers, or as consumers, we do get caught up if we're trying to figure out, like, calculate our own carbon offsetting and our own carbon usage. And so it's very helpful to have this model that is simple, and you just say, okay, this equates this. I can know that I'm doing something. And it also feels tangible, because a tree feels tangible. Like it feels like, you know, that you're doing something. And I really appreciate you explaining the fact that while you're planting trees today, that's for future offsetting, and that we do really need to look at what we're protecting and conserving today that offsets our current usage. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think that is also something that people get lost in when they're trying to understand. And even in the past, there's been a lot of conversation about people saying that they're doing this offsetting, but it's not actually something that's been regulated. And so it turns out that, like, the offsetting may or maybe did not occur. But when you started doing this deep dive, what did you learn about that process?
So one of the main things that I learned about kind of tree planting, if you like, right at the beginning, is that we have to plant the right tree in the right place in the right way. Okay. And it's really also about the communities where we plant these trees. It is so important that we look after the people who are the stewards of those forests. And this is actually also why we just love this whole kind of tree growing aspect, is that through the projects that we select, we actually are able to support up to about 13 of the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Because actually we've decided that it's very important to be able to help these countries who really are affected, who are mostly affected by climate change, and those are usually countries in the developing countries. And you know, they are the ones on the front line of climate change. And we feel so strongly about actually helping those people, and that's why we're very, very diligent about the projects and the charities that we work with. And I'm just I feel so proud of that, you know, that work that we're doing, and the investment we can make into those places, and that's so important. So yeah, no, that's, did I answer your question, Christine?
Yeah,
I'm
no,
kind of
I
thinking,
just
did I
was,
kind of go off on one then?
that's okay. No, but I love that you brought that up as well, because I think really looking at the impact that we have as travelers on community, this is another way that we can ensure that we can create a positive impact. And it's really even distance from the traveler itself, that we may not be traveling to that place, but our travel can create a positive impact, even without outgoing and connecting with a community. And I think that's just showing us another way that we can build positive change and impact into the tourism industry. And so I think it's amazing to think about, we're always kind of, it's easier to look at our direct action. So like if we're traveling to India, then we want to, if we're thinking about positive impact, then we're thinking about the impact we can have in India, but we're not thinking about the indirect impact we could have by supporting trees that are being planted in Africa while we're traveling to India. So it's like we can really layer what we're doing. So I think that's valuable to think about, because for me, I feel like our travel intersects our global community in so many ways that we don't think about, but when we do start to unpack that is where we can see where all the opportunity lies within the industry to create changes for the better.
And then the other thing as well, Christine, that I wanted to say is that, once you've kind of signed up with Trees4Travel, you start logging your trips, which is very easy on the calculator. You basically just say where your start airport is and where you're going to and so forth, and then you have access to a very simple dashboard that kind of shows you the progress of your trees. So you have a direct link to the site. So you can zoom in, see right up, right into where the field is, where those trees are being planted. There are then links where you can find out about the project, how it started, and we then give kind of quarterly updates with images where you can actually really see and feel the impact that you are making, and it just following the story of what's happening. And that's actually another thing that I find, with some other, companies, or when you go to a kind of a carbon offset company, there are so many projects, and I think you kind of get lost in, how many different projects there are. And so we decided that we wanted to focus on maybe just one or two projects at a time, so that we could really kind of follow what was going on and really tell that story properly. And so that's also something, that is really important to us, is just being really careful about the project we select, and then really telling that story so that our travelers can really feel that connection with that project. And I think that's what's so important.
Yeah, I think that is amazing as well, because you mentioned early in the conversation your trip to India, and like when you travel, that's when you see things firsthand and begin to question, and you are developing a connection, and it's that sense of global citizenship and seeing things firsthand that spark that need to create change. But I think similarly to that, like you're saying, this deeper vested connection to the projects allows you to feel this sense of being able to do something, because it's not arbitrary. You actually can see what you're doing. And then it gives you some sense of, I don't know, being able to see what you're doing makes you feel as if you are actually doing something, versus having something kind of living out in the ether that, like, well, I know I paid for this carbon calculation, and I know that they said they're doing this thing, and so I assume. But if you can look at your tree, you have some ownership to it. If you look at this project and you learn about the people not only do you have like the satisfaction of having done that, but you're also learning about another culture and another area and the impact and the challenges they may be facing and how this is supporting them. And so I just think that again it's just kind of bridging those gaps and creating more understanding and awareness and deepening ties to one another, which is, I think, really at the core of all of these issues, is that we need to have that deeper sense of connection to one another across cultures and across the globe, so that we feel
Absolutely.
like we are, and I guess again, even coming back to that sense of camaraderie of a movement, like we need to know that we are a part of something together, because it feels like it gives us more power to actually to try to manage this.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, my biggest wish is that, everybody who travels, at least plants one tree. And already that would make an amazing, difference. There is actually a really cool video. It's actually on our website, that the BBC did, that was, it's very sweet, but it kind of explains it. And it just said, what if everybody just planted one tree? And that's, what would be the effects? So I do kind of recommend everybody watches that. It's just fun, and it explains, how just that simple action can have an effect already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I think exciting times ahead, and we just can't wait to also to visit some of these forests that we're already creating with some of our partners. So, and telling that story. And it's all about the education, actually, that's really, really, it's so important. And we just love telling the story, and doing webinars, and when we go to these conferences, telling the story, sharing our knowledge, and we're still learning. We're not, Nico and I, we're not scientists, or we're travelers. But we love nature. We have kids. We want to make a difference, and we want to make sure that that the future is good for our children, our grandchildren, for our planet. We've got to put this right, and we recognize that we kind of went through life, our younger years, just being ignorant, and we want to put that right now. So, and I think we can. Yeah. So, we're very positive people. And anyway, we're going to keep banging our drum. Yeah. And the lovely thing is, so many people already all over the world are taking taking action and having discussions like we're having, Christine. You're also doing an amazing job bringing this out into the open discussions. It's so important. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to acknowledge that you were saying, that you aren't experts. And I think that's so important to share, that you have amassed knowledge as this kind of was sparked passion for you, and you started learning about it and collecting and then sharing what you know. And I think it's really important for people to hear that, because I think a lot of times we feel like we can't jump into a place like this without first, getting some sort of formal education around it and then talking about it. And I think that that is really shifting during this time as well. And I know many people who have turned to Google search and books and doing their own research to understand how they can make a difference in their company, and self-educating and then sharing. And I think that's really, really powerful to talk about, because I think people need to know that they can create change without being an expert first. Like we need to
Yeah, no, absolutely.
take small steps with what we understand, and then we can get curious and learn more and take bigger steps. But starting there. But I did, before we end our conversation, I really want to talk about how travelers can participate in this program, what that really looks like for them, so that they can know, like, if they just visit your website to participate. And I know that you also mentioned you work with operators to help them offset what they're doing. So can you walk us a little bit through like the real practical part of how this works?
Yeah. So the first thing is very simple. You can just go to our website. Anybody can go to our website. So just a traveler or a travel company or a travel advisor, go to our website. So www.trees4travel.com, and you can just sign up, and you just say, if, and then once you've done that, you've signed up, you can then, as just a traveler, you can already put your, say, your last trip that you did, you can put it in the calculator, and then you can sign up and you can already buy a tree just like that. And then the traveler will have access to their dashboard. And then if you are a travel company, again, you can sign up with us, and then we will contact you, and then we will look at the different ways that you might want to work with us. So we actually have an API. So we can basically bring trees into a booking system. So, where we have the calculator, calculations can be done, and it can all be integrated into a booking system. We can give any partners of ours a simple URL link, which they could put into an email, for example. They could introduce planting trees or translating trips to trees to their customers. So we are, we're very flexible. We kind of listen to our partners or, potential partners. We listen to what they need, and then we work out a way, this best way for them to basically incorporate the trees into their travel offers. So it's a very, very simple process. And also, we worked during the pandemic. We primarily hooked up with a lot of travel management companies. And so we have also got a corporate dashboard. So that's also been a big, big thing for us. So although our website comes over very much as a consumer website, we work with a lot of corporates and travel management companies as well. So we're really set up for that. We have some amazing tools which really help travel management companies as well. Like we have this really cool tool that is What If. It kind of shows you, if you change your mode of transport, how much less CO2 you will emit. So, there's some really, really cool tech that we provide in the background. So again, as I said, from the surface, our website looks very much just consumer based. But actually, we're primarily a B2B. So, we want to help as many travel companies, from OTAs to TMCs, to be able to offer tree growing to their clients, to their customers. So there you go.
Thank you. I really love that. And I think it's just, it's such a shift that we're seeing. And we were talking before we got on about events that we may or may not be attending within the industry, and talking, really intentionally about, well, actually, I don't want to fly to that area, but this event looks really good, and maybe I can take the train to it. And I have noticed just in the last 6 months, having that conversation with other professionals and other travelers, saying, I wanted to go here, and now I'm going to go for 2 weeks. And instead of going from France to Spain, I'm just going to stay in France. Or, when I was planning one of my trips for my company, I made sure it ended right when I knew there was a big industry event that I wanted to go to as well, that I knew I could travel and just cut my emissions. Like, I really wanted to be intentional about linking things together. And I think it'll just be interesting to see like that what if that you were saying, like, okay, maybe if I did this and this and this, then that really helps this way. And it might even open travelers' eyes to possibilities they didn't know existed. And I think there's just so many ways that we can start to look at this and not be a burden or something that's limiting, but actually as something that's creating different and unique opportunities that maybe we just wouldn't have thought of in the past. And I think that's another amazing thing when we look at carbon offsetting.
Yeah. I think we also have like a dedicated dashboard that we've just created that is for travel advisors. So they too have the tools to actually do calculations immediately. So they can too immediately see and they can advise their travelers, maybe doing a trip that is kind of better for planet and people. And then also this kind of dedicated dashboard that we have, they can also easily gift trees if they want to, or they can even sell trees, or maybe even just share the information. So we've really thought about the travel industry and the different ways that travel is sold and how we can help those trees to be integrated into those products. So I think, as I said, I'm very excited for the future. And I think, we need to make this work. We need to make this work for our planet.
Yeah. We don't really have any other choice. And I think that it's what's also spurring so much creativity. So I appreciate, and I love hearing your story and hearing the evolution of that process and how it came about for you. And I think that's so valuable too for other people to hear. Like, we often think if we start out on one track, we need to stay there. And it's amazing when like it actually opens the door to the next thing that is maybe actually meant to be your business or your purpose, is kind of hidden in there, and then it just lands in our lap sometime. And I think that's really magical to see that happen. Well, before we end, Elkie, I have my rapid fire questions. So we'll do those, but those are just to give people a little bit more of a sense of who you are as a traveler, and also maybe create another little spark of inspiration for the listeners. The first one is, what is your favorite book or movie that offers you a travel escape or inspires you to adventure?
Okay, going back to Austria, my favorite movie ever is The Sound of Music, of course.
Yeah.
So I just, that is my favorite movie. My most, I think my most inspiring movie documentary, the most recent one, is Don't Look Up. By Leonardo DiCaprio. I don't know if you've seen that.
I have.
It's,
yes.
It's a very, very good movie. Yeah. And of course it is all about climate change. So I do recommend people watch that. Yeah. Sorry, I've got too many. And then David Attenborough, Breaking Boundaries, was just fantastic. Was a real eye-opener, and it's so visual. I'm a visual communicator. Mm-hmm. And for me, it just explains everything in very simple terms, and fantastic. So sorry, I kind of went on there, didn't I?
That's okay. I didn't set the stage with, these are actually my rapid fire-ish questions. I keep trying to rename them, but it's close enough.
Okay.
What is always in your suitcase or backpack when you travel?
A water bottle.
Sorry.
Yeah, go on, Christine. Sorry, carry on.
What has been your most memorable or impactful travel destination?
India.
Yeah.
It really was, because I want to go
as well. I have a real strong tie to yoga as well. So when you mentioned that, that's one of those places that I've really longed to go for quite some time. Oh, did I lose you now? I hope not. Are you still there? We'll pause for just a moment and see. I can't tell if it's on my end or on Elkie's, but we got through the whole conversation. So, well, for those of you still listening, if you're on the live, I really appreciate you joining us. Elkie, I loved learning more about Trees4Travel, and I can't wait for listeners to visit your website and explore how they can create an impact really easily through their travel experiences. Thank you so much.